Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminolly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today it's something completely different. Today I want to talk again about the Berthier book tag. Now, for some reason, there are some people on BookTube, I won't name them, but there are some people on BookTube who consider me to be evil and dastardly and devious. None of those things are true. However, in this case, when I created the Berthier book tag, I did have an ulterior motive. So if you've watched my original video when I announced the tag, I talked about the fact that my perception of BookTube is that there are lots of people who are reading classic books and there are lots of people who are reading current books, new books, but there's a big gap in between. So the big gap of, the kind of middle, second half of the 20th century, where people just, those books just get forgotten, apart from, favourite authors. So Stephen King, for example, lots of people still read Stephen King books from various times in his career. But generally speaking, I think people tend to either focus on, Victorian or, even classical literature, or on the modern stuff. And I think that's a shame, because I think there is a wonderful backlog of books that we could be reading, from the 20th century, from the late 20th century. So I was thinking about how do we get a list of books that would be interesting to read from those years. And it occurred to me that most of the people who are on BookTube were born in those years. And so, putting two and two together, I came up with the Berthier book tag, where I asked people to name their favourite books from their birth years. So let me talk you through the stats of the Berthier book tag. So 50 people in total did it, which is fantastic. I'd never expected that many people to do it, so that was brilliant. And in terms of the decades that we covered in it, we covered collectively, amongst those 50 people, from the 1940s all the way up to the 2000s in terms of birth years. So the range, or the distribution, is we had one person from the 1940s, two people from the 1950s, so this is their birth year, 12 from the 1960s, 14 from the 1970s, which is my decade, so definitely the best one. 10 from the 80s, 10 from the 90s, and 1 from the 2000s. And in fact, that person was from 2000. So very much right on the cusp of the new century. So we did not. So I'm not going to name the people who were the oldest and youngest, but I think the oldest person was born in 1946. And the youngest, as I say, in 2000. So we had a 21-year-old and I'm going to have to do the maths now. What would that be? 60, 70, 76-year-old, so 75-year-old. So I think it's fantastic that we had that, that range of people involved in it. And that range of ages is involved in BookTube. There are a few people who said they thought they might be the oldest person, but I think, well, clearly all but one of them were wrong. We did have, and the other thing I would say is there was a pretty good spread of years. So there were some years where we had duplicates. So there were 10 years where we had more than one person who had that as their birth year. But 10 out of 50, I don't think it's too bad. So we've got a nice spread of years, over those decades. So clearly, particularly 60s, 70s and 80s, we've got most of the years covered, or indeed 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s. So the main duplicate years we had were 1992, where we had 4 people, 1977, where we had 3 people, and 1972, where we had 3 people. And in terms of the books that people said were their favourite books, we only had 2 duplicates. So 3 people named The Shining by Stephen King from 1977 as their favourite book, which I definitely endorse because it's one of my favourite books. And 2 people named Watership Down from 1972 by Richard Adams as their favourite book. I can't remember if I've read Watership Down or not. I thought I hadn't, but when I looked on Goodreads it said I had. I don't think I have. I do have a copy of it though. and I will be reading it soon, but more on that in a moment. So what that's left us with, and also out of those 50, there were 2 people who said they hadn't read a book from their birth year. So what that leaves us with is a list of 45 books. So removing the 2 people who hadn't read a book and removing the duplicates, we have 45 books. So what we now have is a list of 45 books from the 40s through to the 2000s, which have been endorsed by booktubers as being a good book. Now, what I would add to that is a lot of people said, my favourite book that I read, that came out that year was, I wouldn't count it as an all-time favourite. So this is not a list of people's all-time favourite books by any means. And I like that fact. This is a list of books that are pretty good from a range of years. So not, these are not all going to be fantastic books, but they are books that mean something to people, because they are, they were written in the year of their birth and they've read them and enjoyed them. So what I have done is created a Goodreads list, which I will link to in the description for this video. So I have gone through, I've watched, I think, all of the videos. If your book is not in the Goodreads list, which I will put in the description, and if there's room in the description, I'm going to put a list of everybody who took part and what their favourite birth year book was. So if I've missed you, apologies. I think I've got it up to date. I will add, potentially I will add if more people do the tag, but it certainly seems to have died down a lot over the last couple of weeks. So we've got a list of 45 books that, as I say, that people have named as favourites. It's on Goodreads. My intention is to read all of those books. Now, some of them I've read already. I think a fair few. I think 6 or 7 I've read. But most of them, the vast majority of them, I haven't. And indeed, many of them I had never heard of. So it's a fantastic resource of like lost books. I really like the idea that some of these books are, completely forgotten books. Some of them, when I was looking at them on Goodreads, they had, very few reviews. These are older books that have fallen by the wayside. In some instances, some of them are, big name books, but by no means all of them. So it's a nice range of different books from the past. So you'll see there's a really nice variety of things here. So there's some children's books. There's non-fiction, there's horror, there's science fiction. There isn't, I don't think, any crime at all, which surprised and slightly disappointed me. But there is a real variety of things from across the decades, but across the genres as well. And as I say, a range of things from books that are reasonably obscure to ones that are very well known, from books that are award-winning to books that are in the popular end of fiction. So I'm going to read the 45 books. I don't know what order I'm going to read them in. There's a few that I've got that I haven't read yet, so I'll probably start with those. But I wanted to announce this now because I'm coming to the end of my 100 book challenge. So I have just over 10 books to go. I think 12 books to go. So this will be my next challenge that I do after my 100 book challenge. I will be reading at least one a month, maybe more, of BookTube's favourite birth year books. So if anyone wants to join me, and I'm certainly not suggesting people join me because I've had enough people complain to me about the fact that I forced them to join the 100 book challenge. If anybody wants to join me, that will be fantastic. If enough people want to join in, I might set up a Discord or something like that so we can discuss the books properly. But we'll see how this video lands. It may well just be me doing it. But yeah, I will, as I say, I'll publish the list. I'll publish the names of everyone who took part, and thank you to everyone who took part in doing the tag. It was fantastic to watch everyone's videos, to hear about the different books, to hear about people's experiences of those books. Lots of people talked about when in their lives they'd read the books. It was a really lovely thing for me to watch. I love watching people talk about books, and I love watching people talk about books that are meaningful to them. So it was a very entertaining for me, having created the tag, to watch people responding to it. So yeah, if you want to take part, do let me know in the comments. Everything will be in the description for the video that you need should you want to take part. But yeah, as I say, if enough people want to get involved, we can put a bit of structure around it and decide on a reading order and things like that. If it's just me, I'll just do it in whatever order I feel like. So yes, that was the video. Do let me know what you think. As always, I hope you are safe and well. I hope you're reading good things and enjoying your lives. And yeah, take care, and I will speak to you again soon. Cheerio.